Hey y'all, welcome to the Healing Space Live and Online Chats with Roxanne and Rhonda, the podcast where guests will share information and research on self-love, living a wellness-filled life, how to heal from traumatic events, and more. This podcast is sponsored by Healing Hearts and Minds Publishing, LLC, a new company that publishes books that promote self-love, healthy relationships, avoidance of unhealthy relationships, and much, much more. Check out their first publication, Unhealthy Relationships, Let's Stop the Madness, a guide for those in unhealthy relationships and for those who want to help them. Written by first-time author and co-host of the Healing Space Live and Online, Roxanne Elizabeth Epperson. Visit Amazon.com to purchase the paperback or ebook. Enjoy the show. Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the Healing Space Live and Online Chats with Roxanne and Rhonda. We hope you listened to last week's episode on May 13th where Rhonda turned the mic on me, and the topic was called Straight Talk Domestic Violence. So now this week's episode is going to be a continuation of that, and it's called Straight Talk Domestic Violence Part 2, where we are going to listen to and or watch, if you're watching on YouTube, a TED Talk by Tony Porter. And it's called, what is it called? A Call to Action or a Call to Men? Yes, a Call to Men. And after we watch the video, Rhonda and I will dialogue a little bit. But I'm wondering, Rhonda, do you have anything you want to share before we look at the video?
Yeah, first of all, I like that you said, is it a call to action or a call to men? Because we hope men will take action.
Yes, exactly.
To make care of this, that's for sure. So Roxanne just mentioned part one of this episode. And I just want to again thank Roxanne. I thanked her last time when we did the Straight Talk. And I just want to thank Roxanne because she actually shared generously her story about domestic and sexual violence in her life at the hands of trusted others. And that's not always easy to do. So I really, truly thank you because in doing so, we really hope that it is helping somebody else. We really believe that. We believe that in sharing her story so candidly that somebody heard that and somebody has reached out for help. We gave a number then, and we'll give a number at that same number at the end of this podcast as well. So today, as Roxanne said, we're going to turn the tables on abuse to hear from Tony Porter again, a call to men. And Tony is someone who's done a lot of work in the field of intimate partner violence. So in this TED Talk, he emphasizes the socialization of men and how men who use power and control overly or only identify with the man box. What is the man box, you ask? I'm so glad you did. Stay tuned and listen to what Tony Porter says is a man box. Thank you, and we'll be back.
So I grew up in New York City, between Harlem and the Bronx. Growing up as a boy, we was taught that men had to be tough, had to be strong, had to be courageous, dominating, no pain, no emotions, with the exception of anger and definitely no fear. That men are in charge, which means women are not. That men lead, and you should just follow and just do what we say. That men are superior, women are inferior. That men are strong, women are weak. That women are of less value, property of men, and objects, particularly sexual objects. I've later come to know that to be the collective socialization of men, better known as the man box. See, this man box has in it all the ingredients of how we define what it means to be a man. Now, I also want to say, without a doubt, there are some wonderful, wonderful, absolutely wonderful things about being a man. Well, at the same time, there's some stuff that's just straight up twisted. And we really need to begin to challenge, look at it, and really get in the process of deconstructing, redefining what we come to know as manhood. This is my two at home, Kendall and Jade. They're 11 and 12. Kendall's 15 months older than Jade. There's a period of time, when my wife, her name is Tammy, and we just got real busy and whip, bit, bam, boom, Kendall and Jade. Right? And when they were about 5 and 6, 4 and 5. Jade could come to me. It didn't matter. Come to me crying, It didn't matter what she was crying about. She can get on my knees. She can snot my sleeve up. Just cry it out. Daddy got you. That's all that's important. Now, Kendall, on the other hand, and like I said, he's only 15 months older than her. He come to me crying. It's like as soon as I would hear him crying, a clock would go off. I would give the boy probably about 30 seconds, which means by the time he got to me, I was already saying things like, why you crying? Hold your head up. Look at me. Explain to me what's wrong. Tell me what's wrong. I can't understand you while you're crying. And out of my own frustration of my role and responsibility of building him up as a man to fit into these guidelines and these structures that are defining this man box, I would find myself saying things like, just go in your room. Just go on in your room, sit down, get yourself together, and come back and talk to me when you could talk to me like a what? Like a man. And he's 5 years old. As I grow in life, I would say to myself, my God, what's wrong with me? What am I doing? Why would I do this? And I think back to my father. There was a time in my life where we had a very troubled experience in our family. My brother Henry, he died tragically when we was teenagers. We lived in New York City, as I said. We lived in the Bronx at the time. And the burial was a place called Long Island. It was about 2 hours outside of the city. And as we were preparing to come back from the burial, the cars stopped at the bathroom, to let folks take care of themselves before the long ride back to the city. And the limousine empties out. My mother, my sisters, my auntie, they all get out, but my father and I stayed in the limousine. And no sooner than the women got out, he burst out crying. He didn't want to cry in front of me, but he knew he wasn't going to make it back to the city. It was better me than to allow himself to express these feelings and emotions in front of the women. And this is a man who 10 minutes ago had just put his teenage son in the ground. Something I just can't even imagine. The thing that sticks with me the most is that he was apologizing to me for crying in front of me. And at the same time, he was also giving me props, lifting me up for not crying. I come to also look at this as this fear that we have as men, this fear that just have us paralyzed, holding us hostage to this man box. I can remember speaking to a 12-year-old boy, a football player, and I asked him, I said, how would you feel if in front of all the players, your coach told you you were playing like a girl? Now, I expected him to say something like, I'll be sad, I'll be mad, I'll be angry, or something like that. No, the boy said to me, it would destroy me. And I said to myself, God, if it would destroy him to be called a girl, what are we then teaching him about girls? It took me back to a time when I was about 12 years old. I grew up in tenement buildings, in the inner city, and at this time we're living in the Bronx. And in the building next to where I lived, there was a guy named Johnny. He was about 16 years old, and we were all about 12 years old, younger guys, and he was hanging out with all us younger guys. And this guy, he was up to a lot of no good. He was the kind of kid where parents would have to wonder, what is this 16-year-old boy doing with these 12-year-old boys? And he did spend a lot of time up to no good. He was a troubled kid. His mother had died from a heroin overdose. He was being raised by his grandmother. His father wasn't on the set. His grandmother had 2 jobs. He was home alone a lot. But I got to tell you, we young guys, we looked up to this dude, man. He was cool. He was fine. That's what his sister said. He was fine, right? He was having sex. We all looked up to him. So one day I'm out in front of the house doing something, just playing around, doing something, I don't know what. He looks out his window, he calls me upstairs. He said, hey, Amp, they called me Anthony growing up as a kid. Hey, Anthony, come on upstairs. Johnny called, you go. So I run right upstairs. As he opens the door, he says to me, do you want some? Now, I immediately knew what he meant. Because for me growing up at that time and our relationship with this man box, do you want some meant one or two things, sex or drugs? And we weren't doing drugs. Now, my box, my card, my man box card was immediately in jeopardy. Two things. One, I never had sex. And we don't talk about that as men. You only tell your dearest, closest friends, sworn secrecy for life, the first time you had sex. For everybody else, we go around like we've been having sex since we was 2. There ain't no first time. The other thing I couldn't tell them is that I didn't want any. You know, that's even worse. We're supposed to always be on the prowl. Women are objects, especially sexual objects. So anyway, I couldn't tell him any of that. So like my mother would say, make a long story short, I just simply said to Johnny, yes. He told me go in his room. I go in his room, on his bed is a girl from the neighborhood named Sheila. She's 16 years old, she's nude. She is what I know today to be mentally ill, higher functioning at times than others. We had a whole choice worth, inappropriate names for her. Anyway, Johnny had just gotten through having sex with her. Well, he actually raped her, but he would say he had sex with her because while Sheila never said no, she also never said yes. So he was offering me the opportunity to do the same. So when I go in the room, I close the door. Folks, I'm petrified. I stand with my back to the door so Johnny can't bust in the room and see that I'm not doing anything. And I stand there long enough that I could have actually done something. So now I'm no longer trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get out of this room. So in my 12 years of wisdom, I zip my pants down, I walk out into the living room, and lo and behold to me, while I was in the room with Sheila, Johnny was back at the window calling guys up. So now it's a living room full of guys, like the waiting room in the doctor's office. And they asked me, how was it? And I say to them, it was good. And I zip my pants up in front of them, and I head for the door. Now, I say this all with remorse, and I was feeling a tremendous amount of remorse at that time, but I was conflicting, because while I was feeling remorse, I was excited, because I didn't get caught, but I knew I felt bad about what was happening. This fear getting outside the man box totally enveloped me. It was way more important to me about me and my man box card than about Sheila and what was happening to her. See, collectively, we as men are taught to have less value in women, to view them as property and the objects of men. We see that as an equation that equals violence against women. We as men, good men, the large majority of men, we operate on the foundation of this whole collective socialization. We kind of see ourselves separate, but we're very much a part of it. You see, we have to come to understand that less value, property, and objectification is the foundation, and the violence can't happen without it. So we're very much a part of the solution as well as the problem. The Centers for Disease Control says that men's violence against women is at epidemic proportions. It's the #1 health concern for women in this country and abroad. So quickly, I'd like to just say, this is my love of my life, my daughter Jade. The world I envision for her. How do I want men to be acting and behaving? I need you on board. I need you with me. I need you working with me and me working with you on how we raise our sons and teach them to be men. That it's okay to not be dominating. That it's okay to have feelings and emotions. That it's okay to promote equality. That it's okay to have women who are just friends and that's it. That it's okay to be whole. That my liberation as a man is tied to your liberation as a woman. I remember asking a 9-year-old boy, what would life be like for you if you didn't have to adhere to this man box? He said to me, I would be free. Thank you, folks.
So now that you have heard Tony Porter's TED Talk, Roxanne and I hope that you have heard something that really will stick out for you. And if you're in a position where you need that information for change, we hope that that will also help change you. We hope you heard some commonalities about men who use power and control. We want to put a pin in it right here. We're not talking about all men. This is not about male bashing. This is about men who choose to use power, control over women or over their partners in an intimate relationship. So again, this is about those who use power and control and manipulation. Now, of course, Tony Porter is talking about the socialization of men. We recognize that women also use abuse in relationships. We talked about that last episode, and we know that's true. Women can be aggressive, dominant, Same things that Tony Porter was describing for men, they can be abusive as well. However, statistically, nationwide, 85% of calls are still made by women, and more than likely, men are still the perpetrators. And again, Tony Porter was talking about the socialization of men. What did he say? He made these comments. He said, men are to be tough, strong, courageous, dominating, no pain, no emotions except for anger. He said that men are in charge. Therefore, that means women are not. Men are superior. Therefore, women are inferior. He said men lead. Therefore, women follow. He said men do not cry, even as young boys.
So, yeah, that reminds me of, I could never understand why male crying was an issue. Crying and emotions are something that we all have. I mean, God gave them to us. So what's wrong with expressing them for real? But even though I felt like that, I feel like that, I dated a guy once and he came to my home after hanging out. He was a little tipsy. So I blamed his tears on his tipsiness. I don't know what it was, but he was crying like a baby. Whatever he was sharing with me, and I don't recall, he was crying so hard and it turned me off so bad. And I'm like, wow, that was just, it was just a turn off. Fast forward to me seeing other men cry in different situations, and I didn't feel like that. For example, I've seen Steve Harvey break down on his show, and I admired it. I was like, good. I was admired the fact that he was able to show those emotions, because, like I said, I never understood why men didn't. So yeah, I don't understand why we're not allowed, or men are not allowed to show their emotions.
Roxanne, did I hear you say it turned you off when that guy was? It really did.
Yeah, it did. It was like, I don't know. There was other things about him that turned me off too, but I think that was just
that added to the list.
That was like maybe the straw that broke the camel's back, but I don't know.
It reminds me, and I haven't thought about this in a while, but you sharing that really made me think about a time that a guy who I was with, and we were driving home after work. We worked together, and we were driving home, and he was unusually quiet on the drive home, and I didn't know why. Of course, when I asked him, he said nothing, and went right back to being quiet. When we got to his house, he ran up to the third floor, and I heard the door slam, and I'm like, nothing. We'd had a decent day at work. There were no arguments. I didn't think of anything. I really didn't think about it being anything between him and I. So his mom said to me that her brother died that day. This brother, his uncle, was like his father figure. He had an absent father. So this uncle was his father figure in his life, and he had passed away. So I totally can understand why he was upset. Automatically knew now why he was quiet on the drive home. And then I went upstairs. Being his woman, I went upstairs to console or to hug him, to hold him, just let him know I was there for him. And the door was locked. Of course, I could hear him crying. And I went back downstairs, to give him his moment, which was obviously what he preferred by having the door locked. So I went back downstairs, and later that night, he came to me and he apologized. He apologized, saying that he was sorry that I had to witness him in that state. And boy, oh boy, I just thought, your uncle, your father figure, who you was really close with, passed away. You don't owe me an apology. However, it really speaks to this man box thing. It's deep. It's really deep. Men really live in, and I think if I could just expand on man box, it's like a cage. It's like a cage that holds men in, that they have to act a certain way and only that way. Yeah.
Yeah, actually Tony experienced that as well, didn't he? When his brother died, his father, when the ladies left the car and him and his father stayed behind, and his father was crying, and I believe his father apologized to him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so.
And it was like, wow, why are you're apologizing? Your son just died. You just buried your son, not just died. You just buried your son. You're allowed to cry. It's okay. So I don't know. And then
Yeah,
as far as women, again, just real quick about women being abusive, I had my healing space workshops at McGee Women's Hospital in the past. And I've had several women admit to me when we talked about abuse that they were the perpetrators,
wow, yeah.
So and I was new at it at the time, and it was like, wow, I think I'm here talking to the women about the men being abusive, and here there's women in the group who are abusive as well. So yeah, this message is for everybody.
It sure is. Sure is.
Mm-hmm.
There's another very heart-wrenching, heartbreaking part for me. And I've listened to Tony Porter's TED Talk several times for professional reasons. And when he talks about being 12 years old and Johnny calling him up, yeah, I know, I see you shaking your head.
It was messed up. Yeah.
It is messed up. And when he talks about the fact that they were up there, quote unquote, to pull a train, and I'm so glad Mr. Porter corrected himself in that
Yes.
video and said it was really rape. It's not, people give it names. And I made a speech one time that rape by any name is rape. I gave a speech on that. We don't have to call it date rape or pulling a train. It was rape. So I'm really glad that Mr. Porter acknowledged that in his talk, But even at the age of, I think he said he was 12 years old.
Well, yeah.
12.
Mm-hmm.
Even at that age, what was more important to him was keeping his reputation, excuse me, as a man. And he was 12 years old. He's not even a man. But to keep his reputation, keep his man card, I think nowadays they would call it your man card. To keep his man card, he chose to lie because that was more important to him to get the fellas, especially Johnny, to believe he had participated in the rape so that he could go on being one of the boys. That he could, stay inside that box. So, wow.
I tell a real cute story. It's related and not related. When I was 9 years old, somebody had a birthday party. And back in the day, we used to play spin the bottle. Remember that? Did you ever have to play? And then you were supposed to have to kiss the person or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're 9 years old. So we decided whoever had to do the kissing, they had to go into the bathroom. We didn't watch the kiss. You just went into the bathroom. And so me and the little boy went into the bathroom to do the kissing. We wasn't ain't nobody was trying to kiss nobody. We was like, we just gonna pretend like we did. So
wow.
That's not related, but I just thought that it just flashed back in my mind how we pretended like, and then we just left out. Like in Tony's case, he actually had his pants zipped down so he could really feel like, so that the guys could see, yeah, he's zipping up his pants. So he really had sex with this girl. And
wow.
that really broke my heart because he talked about that child had mental health issues, and here they're just in there taking turns on her because he didn't get to that part, but I'm sure that's what happened. I believe they all, however many it was, went in there and took turns with that woman. That's so sad. But I digress. But I just had that little flashback of pretending.
That's funny. I got to share a real funny story because even to this very day, apparently, and I don't remember this as well as this guy does, but this is a guy in my life I see from time to time. I mean, like I run into when I say I see, I run into him in different places from time to time, and he'll say, "Hey, you know what? You never did kiss me." He refers back to when we played spin the bottle.
Oh my gosh!
50-some years ago. I guess I ruined the man box for him. I don't know.
Wow, that's amazing. We both have spin the bottle stories. That's hilarious.
I know. It's funny.
Okay, I'm sorry, guys. We just digressed a little bit.
Oh, I think that was.
Got to have some humor in this world, in this topic every once in a while. So
Yeah. But speaking back to this topic, bringing it back to this topic again. We talked about it last week, and on the last time on May 13th, as Roxanne said in part 1. We want to remind you that if you are a person who is experiencing intimate partner violence in your relationship, please reach out for help. If you're someone who uses power control and you're not sure, if you question yourself, we encourage you to reach out as well. There are what's called battering intervention services, battering intervention programs across this nation for men and some for women as well, way more for men, but across this nation. If you don't know a local number, we're going to give you a national number because we're not sure where in the United States you are as you hear this podcast. But we're going to give you a national number that we gave you in part 1. that you can call and ask for if you're someone who uses power and control, you can call and ask for a number for a place where you can learn to break the cycle. Is there a veteran intervention program in your neighborhood? And nowadays, with things being virtual, you may find one that is virtual. I don't personally like that option, but I think with COVID, it has really shown us that sometimes some things can be done differently. If you can find a live in-person group, that would be my recommendation for sure. So that number is 1-800-799-SAFE. 1-800-799-SAFE. And we really encourage you to reach out for help.
And I just wanted to add too that if you visit our YouTube channel to watch this episode as opposed to listening to it, you can give us feedback. And also on that channel, you will see videos from a batterer intervention program in Duluth, Minnesota. So we have all of the gentlemen's, he breaks down the power and control wheel. So I just thought those were some powerful videos for you to check out. And our YouTube channel is at warheals.org, I believe it is. Forgive me if that's not correct, but I think you should be able to just put in Warheals, WAARHEALS, and you should be able to access our YouTube channel. And we want you to also like us and subscribe. So we're at the very beginning stages. I think we have 2 likes so far.
I gotta call some family members.
Yeah. Because we need 1,000 likes and 4,000 views before we can become it can become monetized. So we also are always looking for donations. So, but if you don't have any money, that's a way you can help us raise some money by liking us, subscribing, and sharing. Thank you.
All right. Great message, Roxanne. Glad you got that in there. All right. So, feel like we're coming to a natural close, Roxanne?
Sounds like it to me.
All right. So, as always, we want you to remember,
we got your
we
back.
got your back.
Even though we're in different spaces. Thank you, guys. One more thing. On the last Thursday of the month, we have our live panel discussion. So look out for information on how you can register for that event, because we're going to close out with a panel discussion on mental health, because this is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we started off the month with a therapist, and we're going to end with a panel of therapists. I believe. Are they both therapists, Rhonda?
Yes.
Okay. So so tune in for that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
There are 2 things we would like you to do. Number 1, enter our monthly drawing by sending your email address to info@warheals.org. Spelled out, that is info@WARHEALS.org. Put drawing in the subject line. We will notify the winner or winners via email by midnight on the last Thursday of each month. Our second request, engage with us on IG. Follow, like, and subscribe to all of our social media platforms at warheals_ on IG, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. WAARHEALS_ on IG, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. As always, we thank you for listening and see you next week.